You know, we didn't exactly have to be geniuses to figure out that this was the story. In fact, it was like 1,000 stories. I mean, for 25 straight years, Las Vegas led the nation in growth. We were growing like a bat out of hell, and growth became an ends and a means. It was an industry by itself. Casinos and developers made billions of dollars. Homeowners saw their property values soar. Everyone was making money, and everybody pretended it could go on forever. Obviously, it could not. When the bubble burst, Las Vegas felt it more than anyone in the country. I mean, it started as a trickle of foreclosures, and soon it became like a tsunami. Entire neighborhoods were wiped out. People kicked out of their homes, living in their backyards, a lot of them committing suicide. I mean, the consequences were terrible, and we were covering it all the way along, but not in sort of a comprehensive way.
So we really felt like it was time to sort of take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We knew that these things were happening day to day, but no one really understood why. And we would get calls all the time from people, why won't my lender work with me? I want to stay in my home. Help me avoid foreclosure. And so we really wanted to find a way to explain to people how this whole system works so that they can understand that the person on the other end of the phone they were dealing with wasn't actually their lender, that in fact it was a servicer who was being paid whether or not they foreclosed, and in some cases being paid more if they did foreclose. So that was a key part of this, to look at why did it happen, how did it happen, and what were we going to do about it? Was there potential to recover here?
You know, we knew going in, it's complicated stuff. It's hard to draw the nexus between what happened on Wall Street and these people who were losing their homes here in Las Vegas. The process itself was complicated, and it's not sexy. It's not strippers dancing on a pole or something like that. We knew it. We knew it was going to be ratings death in a lot of ways because it's depressing stuff. But we also knew that in addition to explaining how it happened, who was responsible, that we had to put a human face onto it. And that was the toughest part maybe for those of us who work directly on it, is hearing these stories, these heartbreaking stories. I mean, the one family that you talked to who ended up living in a tent in their backyard, the suicides, people who just had to give up and took their own lives as a result of losing their homes, the terrible devastation that so many people faced and are still facing.
Well, and we also found sometimes that there were people who were embarrassed, right? They didn't want to share their story on camera because they were embarrassed that they had lost their home or were going to lose their home. They were being told that it was their fault, that you got into a loan you couldn't afford and you should have known better. And what we started to hear as we started to look at, piece after piece, the layers under the onion, was that there were criminal implications here. And we started to hear from our sources that there were investigations that were underway that were going to not only look at some of these guys who were doing the foreclosure, modification scams, and those kinds of things, but bigger picture, robo-signing, and what the banks and the servicers were doing to expedite these loans illegally.
And here's what really frosts us in the end. It's not over. I mean, there is another wave of foreclosures still to come. There are thousands of more families who are going to lose everything that they have and be kicked out on the streets. And there's no question that these guys on Wall Street started this process, that they made billions and billions of dollars, and not a single one of these people are going to prison. There have been no prosecutions to speak of any of the bankers who are involved in this stuff here in Nevada. In fact, the only people who have been prosecuted are the people who committed mortgage fraud against the banks, and that really frosts us.
Well, and there are some lawsuits, some very high-profile lawsuits. Our Attorney General is one of the first to actually do a criminal case against robo-signing. And we're watching that very closely because it's really unclear at this point whether or not that's ever going to result in any sort of penalty either. So it seems like lots of people spent a lot of time on this and rattled their sabers, but we're really still waiting to see whether anyone's going to be held accountable.
It's sort of like an iceberg, too. So much of what we did on the air, and that was a lot of stories on the air, but beneath the surface, there was so much more work by other members of our team. We wanted to explain how it happened, what the consequences were, but offer some hope to those who are still going through this. Resources where they could turn for help, what kind of legal help they might have available. And so that was maybe the bulk of the work that we did, was trying to give some glimmer of hope to those who had gone through it or were still going through it.
Well, and there was a law passed here in Nevada shortly before our series ran to try to force the banks to foreclose legally if they were going to foreclose. They had to provide documentation. That law is also probably going to be challenged as we go forward. But the stalemate that happened, the foreclosures started to stop because the banks couldn't or wouldn't meet the requirements. It's starting again. So the foreclosures are picking up again. We're going to see a lot more this year, and we're just not done.
But we are immensely proud of the work that our team did here and the support we got from management, the toes that we stepped on. These are some pretty big toes here in Las Vegas and elsewhere, but we had total support and a total commitment from our station, and we are so proud to be joining you there in New York for this ceremony and this incredible award.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you.